Welcome back to the Freedom Kickstarter podcast. So today's episode is, I think, a first. We're actually going into numbers, finances, and all that fun stuff. So today's guest is Laura Powner, and I'm going to put her on the spot, as always, by getting her to introduce herself. So Laura, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I am going to talk about numbers today because I'm a chartered accountant. Hopefully everyone will keep watching and don't turn off at this point. I'm also a business strategist, so I use the numbers kind of as a starting point to then look further into businesses. And I work with six-figure startup founders, and I'm kind of helping them build a business in the first place, but then grow it, scale it to ultimately exit.
Love it. Cool. So I guess the obvious place to start is when you go into a business, what kind of things are you looking for generally?
So usually I'm there because they've got one objective, which is to grow, which means to them, I want to grow that top line revenue, right? That's their focus. They're not really looking at profit. I do. And we start with numbers and data because everyone has a vision, but no one can usually tell me where they're currently at today. So I go in step one and I say, okay, you've told me where you want to go. I'm going to look at where we're at today. What's the gap to get to that place? And we start there. And whilst I might go in under the guise of I'm going to help with finance, it then becomes not a financial issue, right? So we usually have to go, what's happening in sales and marketing? What's happening in operations? What are the team doing? How are all of those factors helping us bridge that gap?
Got it. And I know we spoke about this a bit beforehand in terms of my opinion is that most people in kind of this space, like the online world, are generally pretty clueless about their numbers. And generally they think more sales is what I need, more leads, all this kind of stuff. But is that sometimes the case? Or do you find actually mostly for what they want to achieve, there's something else at play?
Usually there's something else. In terms of the space that we're in digital world, they are usually, the founders are quite creative, right? So they're full of visions, they're full of ideas, and they're forever moving on to the next one and the next one. And they have this trail of ideas that they've already built that they're not using. So there's this whole asset, cupboard in the business that we need to open up and start looking at that. And yes, leads are important, but what can we do with what we've already created? And why didn't that work in their mind in the first place? And we dig into that.
Got it. And what kind of stuff do you tend to see that people are getting wrong?
Where do we start?
How long? Yeah, we've got about an hour. So
Be gentle. So step one, they don't look at the numbers at all, or they kind of have a quick glance and they go, "Yeah, that's nice," and they don't even know what that means. So big mistake number one: they're not looking at the data. Right. And it's not just P&L, it's not just profit and revenue. There's other data like how many people have landed on our sales page, how many people clicked on the buttons, how many people came to the presentations. So much data is available and nobody minds it. So what data do we have? And I try to build like a data dashboard. And it will vary for businesses, but the things I've just mentioned there are the core things that we're looking at, what's working there. Then we go through and we say, okay, what assets do we have? Because like I said, they're always wanting to build something new. They're always super excited for the creation, and then they tune out a bit for delivery, and then we crash and burn again. So it's like, okay, what is the journey that their clients are going on? Right, they're starting, let's be really basic. They've got a pain point and we're meant to solve it. Yeah, so we're taking them on a journey. Do we have a product for that value journey that we offer? And most people aim at one price point and then panic because it's like, well, not everyone can afford that. And it's like, but what if we solved part of the problem, not necessarily all of it, and did a lower price product? What if we did a really high end product where we solved it for them? And then after that, what if we've solved all their problems and we have another offer that keeps them with us to maintain that solution? Because how many people have you helped, right? You've given them the solution and it worked, and then they leave it and they try and do something different. And it's how do we keep people in our business, keep serving them and helping them? So that's a huge one that gets missed all the time. And then if you're looking to exit, it's you can't do all the work. And most owners really struggle with letting that go. And I don't mean you have to have a huge team, but how can we use technology? How can we create automations? How can we build passive products to take your time a little bit out of the business? And they're the core things that people don't look at and don't get involved in.
definitely want to touch on that second point more, but I was kind of laughing when you said the first one because it was basically, that's me, as in get so excited to create something, launch it, and then Yeah, I'll do a bit of promotion after the first sort of couple of months when everything tends to fall by the wayside and it's on to the
Yep.
next thing. What what do you think puts people off really focusing on that, or what makes people scared of the numbers in general?
I think, I mean, we're getting a bit personal now, but I think most people attach a meaning of their own worth to those numbers. And looking at that on a daily basis isn't that pleasant, right? So if you sell something and not a lot of people buy it, then immediately it's, oh my gosh, that's a me issue. Not it was a copy issue, not it was an offer issue, not it was a client, we didn't meet the client's needs with the product. None of that. They make it mean something about themselves, and it makes everybody a little bit squirmy. So they just quickly jump to the next thing, and it's like we just need to make a few tweaks, and we could do it, we can make it automated, right? You don't even need to come back and touch it, but it meant something and it didn't work out, so they move on to the next thing.
And what got you interested in this? Because the way I see it, you kind of have finance people who will just look at the numbers, and then you've got marketing strategists who probably, for the most part, are just going to look at things like sales and revenue. They might look at data like click-through rate, like opt-ins, that kind of thing, list size. But not many people that I know blend the two. So is that kind of, did you just see a gap in the market for that? Like, what was the journey into it?
Um, it was twofold really. In the beginning, doing sets of accounts and giving them to companies 9 months after that year was over, they don't care. Like, what? Who cares what happened 9 months ago, right? There's no interest in that, and there's no real joy for me in telling someone what they did last year. So that was step one. That was quite boring. And step two, it's there's so much. When you get a finance person in, really all you want them to do is increase your revenue and maximize your profit. And how can I possibly do that by producing P&Ls and balance sheets? I can't. All I can tell you is what the numbers are today, and that doesn't help you change them. So for me to deliver what I've been hired for, I have to go poking around. And I'm really nosy and I love business, so I get to do everything that I like this way.
Nice. I know we were speaking before that you said about it's often a case of like communicating with different parts of or different teams and companies and that kind of thing. How easy or difficult is that? Like, do you get much friction from people? Do you find your clients tend to give you free reign?
It's a mix. So generally, when someone says finance want to talk to you, everybody has squeaky bum moment because it's like that means we're getting fired,
Mm.
right? There's only one reason that finance want to talk to us, and once we get over that hurdle, and I explain that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to improve operations. In most cases, I'm trying to build a structure that isn't there in the team, which is better for everyone because there's somewhere to go, right? Often they're in a role that can't progress because there's nowhere else above it. And I'm trying to make the team a little bit more efficient. So there's friction in the beginning, and then we tend to get over that, and it works out okay. In terms of working with founders, in the beginning, they're totally like, yeah, have free reign. Like, do what you need to do, Laura, whatever you want. And then the minute you start going and poking their baby as they see it, it's like, what are you doing? Why are you changing that? What have you said to them? So it can be a little bit bumpy, but when you can present data that says, look, I know you don't like it and I know it's uncomfortable, but this is what's happened in the 3 months that we've been doing this, they're like, oh, okay, maybe a little bit longer. But yeah, there can be friction, but we can work it out.
And in terms of fixes for people's finances and helping them get, more profit, all that kind of stuff, are there typical things you tend to do more of than others? Like, is it sort of creating those missing products? Is it sort of looking at churned revenue? Like, what tends to stand out as being a common thing that people just aren't doing?
There's a couple of things. Price point is one. Most people just picked a number when they created it, right? And they didn't think about the value. When I'm pricing, I'm very much working out what is the return on the investment, right? If somebody buys this product, or in my case, buys my service, what can they expect to get as a return? And that makes my marketing an absolute doddle. If you're going to pay me this and I'm going to get you 5 times that, where's the friction for you, right? And we can do that for all clients. What do you offer? What's the return on investment? So pricing, point one. Point two, yes, I don't think they meet the full client value journey, as I call it. So they might find part of a solution. They might not completely offer the whole solution. And they definitely never, in most cases anyway, have something where they can keep a client and keep helping them. People need constant support, I think, in most cases, and nobody offers that. So I would say those are the key things.
Got it. And let's say someone at the moment isn't ready for your help necessarily. What's something that, like, a digital entrepreneur, let's call them, what are questions maybe they should be asking themselves or even possibly asking their accountant?
Well, that's interesting. I would definitely ask that return on investment question. What return do you get for your customers? Is your pricing fair based on that? Because that changes everything. It makes a lot, it just reduces the friction all the way around. So I would start there. Obviously, as an accountant, one of the things we're meant to do is come in and look at your costs. And I do that, but it takes me half an hour to go through that and see. You need to ask your accountant, am I taking advantage of all the possible reliefs that are available to me? And if your accountant hasn't told you about the basic one of you can spend, £50 of vouchers on yourself 6 times a year, chances are they're not having a look at what else they can get you, right? That's the basic one. So if your accountant hasn't mentioned that to you, you need to go and ask them today, what reliefs are available and why don't I have them? And you need to push a little bit harder because often they'll go, yeah, no, I can't think of anything else. There will be something else. And there's loads of cool accountants now on Instagram that you can follow who tell you about this stuff. And any time you see something, you should ask your accountant. It shouldn't be that way. Your accountant should be proactive, but they won't be.
Yeah, I know we were speaking beforehand and I was saying that I personally see a gap between your old school accountants who might work with construction companies, they've got a bakery on the books, they've got a solicitor, whatever it is, and then people who are now creating courses and selling them around the world and doing seminars and stuff. And I sort of definitely see that as still a bit of a gap, but it sounds like you're saying there are people now who are, well, I suppose yourself included, who are kind of starting to bridge that, I guess.
I think so, yeah. And I think, you can, it depends what you want. Every client, because I have an accounting practice as well, so every client whoever comes through our door says, I just want an accountant who'll take care of me. And I say, cool. And then they say, I just want to pay 50 quid a month. And it's like, okay, I hear you, and that's not what I can give you, because I can't give you the level of attention that you need on £50 a month. I simply can't. But yes, I charge a lot more than a regular accountant, but again, like I said already, return on investment, this is what I expect to save you. And I can generally pay for myself for 3 to 5 years. If I can't, I don't take them on. So you need to make sure that you're working with someone who is thinking that way, who is actively marketing their business, right? These content marketers who are accountants are in the world that we live in. Those are the ones you want. And I'm sorry, but not, Dave, who's been doing it for 50 years on the high street. He's probably not in this world. And those people do exist. You just have to look.
Going back to the beginning, how did you get into doing this?
Well, at school, I decided I didn't want to go to university. I couldn't personally see the point in spending all that money in a qualification when I knew I was going to go into accounting. And I knew I could just get a job and get paid to learn, and they'd pay for my training. So I was like, it seems like a no-brainer. So that's what I did. I went and trotted off to interviews at 17 and got my job offer at a top 10 firm, which is pretty cool. And I did the training and I thought, oh God, this is not for me. I don't get it. Because I was a child. I was 18 years old. What did I know about business? The answer was nothing. And I didn't really understand the training and I didn't really understand the numbers. And I used to hate going to those client meetings because I was just like, oh, they're paying for an expert and you've got me. So I didn't like it at first, and then because I didn't know, I worked really hard because I thought I've got to be better. So I studied like a trooper, and you would work all day and you would study all night and you did your exams and eventually you passed them all. And I ended up being like the youngest person on a fast track to partnership ever in the history of the firm. And I was like, now this feels quite good. So that was my decision to be an accountant, basically because my dad told me to be one and I didn't have anything better to do. And I thought, yeah, okay. Because he said, what about law? And I went on work experience and I thought, I don't want to stand up in court. That feeling of, can you just introduce yourself, Laura? That's what I think court would have felt like for me every day. So accounting won because I didn't have to do the standing up part. But that was literally how I got into it. And then, like I said, accounts are quite dull. But business itself and talking to the founders and their visions for it, I loved it.
So was it a case then that it's quite organic that you got into it, as in, the numbers were dull, got involved with businesses and suddenly thought, actually, there's some cool stuff here that can merge the two worlds?
Yeah, and I had a bit of a push, really, because I switched firms. I was on this fast track to partner, and I thought, I can't be a partner because I don't know enough about tax and business. I know how to audit and I know how to prepare a set of accounts, and to me that didn't seem that valuable and I couldn't get the experience that I wanted, so I switched firms and they promised me that I would absolutely get that, and I didn't, and I absolutely hated that firm, and I was like, I cannot stay here. And I had a client, they basically gave me they swept up everybody else's portfolios of what they didn't want and gave me that in my manager's portfolio and said, have all of our worst clients. So I was like, great. And one of them was a sort of a software company, really, I guess you'd call them. And everyone said, it's awful, Laura, you'll hate it. And I thought, it can't be that bad. And I went to meet him and I loved him. Like, he was crazy, but he was brilliant, like a typical entrepreneur. And I was like, I can work with this guy, but his numbers were dire and it didn't look good. And they had a lot of stuff going on with the bank. They had a loan that they couldn't repay. And they got to the point where they were about 2 weeks away and the bank said, we're going to close. Like, it's not going to work. And the guy said to me, will you come work for me? And I was like, yes, I will, because I don't want to be in this firm anymore. So I told my parents I'm off to work for this company that's going bankrupt. And they were like, what have you done? Oh, she's thrown her career away. Anyway, it didn't go bankrupt and we turned it around and we sold it for a lot of money 3 years later. And that was it. From that moment on, I was hooked and there was no way I was leaving the business world. Yes, accounting is a thing I can do, but business is what gets for me going.
Nice. That was a good segue, actually, because I was going to move on to exiting next up. So lots I want to ask on this, but kind of broad question, and we spoke about this before, but in terms of exiting, I think we mentioned that, it's not right for everyone to build that kind of business.
Yeah.
So what sort of businesses do you see actually lending themselves quite well to having an exit versus what's more like lifestyle business?
Yeah, I think we need to bear in mind that there's more than one definition of an exit as well. Like, when we talk about it, generally you and I will mean we're going to sell it, right? We're going to sell it to a new owner. But you can exit out a business where you don't need to work in it anymore. You have a team that run it for you, and you might rock up and do a couple of board meetings and be the vision, but you don't need to be in it. So it depends which one you want. Either way, I guess you could say there are a couple of things that you need to build. One is recurring revenue. Nobody wants to buy a business that's one-time income from multiple clients. They need to see recurring stuff. So, like if you're a website company, you want to keep on charging a maintenance fee, for updating stuff. That's a really nice, easy, recurring one. You might run a membership where people have done your course, they've learned some stuff, and they keep on coming every month to keep updated and hearing the latest trends in the industry. That kind of stuff. So you need the recurring revenue. You need a really good growth story. You want a graph that goes like that, not like that. That's much easier to sell. So a good story works. You need a clean business. The number of businesses that I have been into that are what I would call dirty, like there are no contracts, there are no agreements anywhere, nothing is being managed well, there's a history of incomplete projects. All of that needs to be tight. You need good financials. You need to have kept all your records. You need to not be doing dodgy stuff, which you'd think is a given, but not always. And you need to have documented your SOPs, right? So how do you do everything? It needs to be that if you got hit by a bus, someone else could run your business. And most people don't do any of those things. And just in creating all of that, even if you're not going to exit, you can spot all the holes for yourself and you think, oh my gosh, we've been missing out on all of these things. Let me plug this gap now.
I think you've basically described 90% of the business owners that I know there. And it's funny because I would often say to people, like, we say we're business owners, we're kind of not, because it's funny when you go and talk to someone who's got a real world business, like they're in a shop, or I used the example earlier, but a construction company or anything like that, even an agency, they're probably doing most of those things kind of okay.
Yep.
Whereas a lot of the online people, because there are so few barriers to starting a business nowadays, which is amazing, but with so few barriers, people also then just skip the basic stuff they should be doing. I suppose no one's told them what they need to be doing either.
That's right. There's no school. There's no training. And I think also when you fall into business, like, did we all go into it knowing that we'd make it work? I don't think so.
No.
We were all going on a wing and a prayer, right? And it might work and it might not. And it sort of did. And so you just keep going. And we do need to just remember it's a separate entity. I know we all learn that when we start doing bank accounts for limited companies and all the rest of it. But you do have a business. And whilst it might not be clear cut, you might not have HR and you might not have sales, it might all be you. You do have systems and you do have processes. And are yours right? And are they the most efficient way of doing it? Possibly not. And just taking time to look at that, it's invaluable.
It certainly makes me think that, again, all my businesses have been small, but I look back at, had a personal training business, and I know friends who had similar types of businesses and they sold them, or they kind of passed them on and kept to sharing them.
Yep.
And I never did that because it was just, I'm going to rock up and train people and you pay me this amount per month into my bank account. And that was basically the business. And again, when I had an online fitness business, it was similar. Like there were no processes documented. It was just me. And yeah, I think that was not a mistake because I think everything kind of leads you to where you are. But certainly things where I wish at the time I'd thought a bit more about it, like the documentation, the SOPs, all that kind of stuff. How do you find, or maybe you don't find, but how do you find you can get people who've got a business to be more in the mindset of a business owner?
I think the killer one is when you talk to them and you say, what is your plan? What is your long-term vision? And they're like, I'm going to run this business forever. And I'm like, that's nice, but probably not. There's probably going to come a time when you can't work, and then what are you going to do? Like, what's your plan for retirement? And then they look at me blankly and a bit like, what? And it's like, so you've got no pension? It's like, no. Got no investment? No. And I'm like, right. And it's that fear factor that makes them think, oops, I haven't looked at some of these things. The easiest way for me to hook people is right at the beginning. So I have seen so many people go from sole trader to limited company, and without giving away all my secrets, there are some amazing tax things that you can do as you move from a sole trader to a limited company, and they don't do any of them. They just start a limited company and it has £100 of shares in it. And I'm like, well, where's all your sole trader business gone? They're like, what? And I'm like, you didn't buy that? They're like, no. And I'm like, duh. And if I can hook them there, then I've got them. And that's how I try and do it. Like, sole trader to limited company, oi, this is what you need to do. And now you've got a real business. And, it's what can I do to contribute to education in my limited marketing way?
Got it. So if someone came to you and they said, I think I mentioned you before, we'll use kind of vaguely my business as an example. Let's say I came to you and I said, I want to exit, and for me, exiting means I want to sell this in however many years' time. You give me a time scale. What would be the steps that you would go through with me?
So question one, what do you want to sell it for? And don't obviously answer that here. But what do you want to sell it for? Because, people come with a big number and it's like, I want to sell it for 10 million. And I'm like, that's nice. What's your current revenue? 300,000. Okay. Well, I'd like to sell it for 10 million too, but it's probably not going to happen. So I need a number. And what is that number that would be okay for you and your family? And we start there. And then I'm working out, and the way that you value a business, it can change. It depends on the market at the time. It depends on the niche. Lots of things change. But let's assume we could get a 2 or 3 times multiple, right? What do I need the business to be valued at the time of sale? How am I going to get you there? And it's always the same. We're here now. We want to get to there. What is the gap? Where am I going to fill it? And I'm always going to go with cleaning up the back end because it needs to look clean and tidy. Where is my recurring revenue? Where is my passive income? And in your case, it's like, it's Mike Samuels. Well, I can't sell Mike Samuels with the business, right? So what is your IP? What is it that you teach? What is your framework? What are your methodologies? How can we formalize them and put them into products so that it's no longer Mike's teaching, it's Mike's theory, it's Mike's framework, but anyone can teach it. And that's what we're trying to do, and bring you out of the day-to-day completely. And that'll be really hard for you.
Yeah, I think for me in particular, that'd be quite difficult because I'm not a control freak, but I just enjoy doing everything in the business.
Yeah.
So I guess that's met with friction sometimes, I suppose.
Yeah, and where can we, like simple things automate, like for this podcast, right? That's an example of knowing how to work with you. But you message me personally. It's like, Mike, let me build you a system, right, where you don't need to do that at all. And if we're doing it in the podcast, we're probably doing it on something else. What else can we build so that it's running on technology? And I know that you're still the face of it, but if we're building it so that tech's doing the heavy lifting and we've formalized your frameworks and methodologies and we've got the products and all the rest of it, you can still poke your nose in, but we just don't need you quite as much. And we're going to have to do some therapy about that probably.
Probably, yeah. And it's one of those, though, I think that in a way helps with positioning as well, because sometimes I really like being very accessible in the business, but sometimes when you're too accessible, I think that can harm positioning. So I suppose in a weird way, that probably helps in terms of perceived value, all that kind of stuff as well.
Because when someone's buying it, what are they looking for? All they want to know is that the day they take it off you and you disappear off into the sunset, all of that income doesn't drop off, right? They need to know that. They need to know that all the systems without you in the business will run. And they need to know that everything that you've created, they can sell without your presence. And it's all well and good when everyone talks about, but there'll be a handover period. Believe you me, handover periods don't tend to go that well. So if we can have a business that we can essentially show them when they're looking, here you go, you can just take this baby, they'll be happy. and that's all they want.
You mentioned about what do you want to sell the business for at the start. So I suppose twofold question. One, what's realistic? Is it that kind of 2 to 3 times revenue? And secondly, how much do you find people need? Because I know people throw around numbers about, oh, if I had £1 million, I'd be able to do that, or oh, I need 10 million to retire. Is there kind of any formula you have for that?
Yes and no. It depends on the cost of their lifestyle. So if they tell me like, oh, I only need £1 million, I say, oh, that's nice. And then we say, where do your kids go to school, and what kind of holidays do you have, and what house do you want to live in? It's like, yeah, £1 million's not going to pay for that for very long, is it? So what does the lifestyle that they lead cost? What does the future lifestyle that they want to lead cost? And we work back from that. And everyone's different. Like, you know, what you spend will be wildly different to me, because I spend ridiculous amounts of money on educating my kids, right? And that's not going to stop for another few years. So it's always starting there. Multiples are different. It depends on the niche. It depends on, and I always say this, and people in the world of finance and accounting look at me like I'm an idiot, but this has worked for me every time. It depends how painful you are to other people, right? Do your competitors come up against you over and over? Is it always your face when it should be theirs? They will pay a lot of money to get rid of that. And also, there's a lot more buying at the moment of not necessarily competitors, but something that would bolt on well to someone else's business. And if we can be a good bolt on to someone else's and we position ourselves like that, they're easy sales. And it is possible in any economy, because I've done it.
What's the process of selling? Because the reason I ask is I think, again, a lot of this it will sound very appealing to people who are watching or listening,
Yeah.
but they'll also be like, okay, so now I understand a bit about how I need to structure things. I need the SOPs. I need to outsource stuff, make myself less involved in the business. But then when it comes to actually selling, like, how do you go out and find a buyer? Like, what's your negotiation strategy? How long will it take? Because I think for most people watching, it'd be quite interesting to know, because it's kind of a bit alien, really.
Yeah, it's in all honesty, it's not a fun process at all. And the time it takes can vary, but let's just do like a fairly standard example. In every business that I have exited or taken to exit, there has been somebody in the industry that we were either a direct competitor to, or we were a good bolt-on. And so at these industry events, you kind of put the feelers out. You don't say I'm for sale, but you know, the founders are out there putting the feelers out, and the word gets out. And then generally they come and approach directly, or they'll send a broker. Or you can go to a broker who will find a buyer. These people exist, right? And that's all they do all day long. They just partner up businesses and match you up. When you find somebody, the initial process is they send you what we call a heads of terms, which is what the deal might look like at top level. So we'll pay you this in this way, and we expect to get the deal done by this date. And then you do the fun stuff, and this is where you make or break it, due diligence process. So they've got an idea of what they're going to offer for you, and now they want to come and look behind the curtains, and they look at everything, and I mean everything. And a lot of my clients that we've exited have been to US companies, so it's different laws, right? UK to US, not wildly different, but they are different. So they have tons of questions about state laws and all these things. It's like, it's not relevant. We're a UK company. So I spend half my time saying not relevant. But they come and look at everything. You have to upload all of your data into what they call a data room, which is basically like a sophisticated Google Drive. And then they go through it. And then you get interrogated, basically, by multiple people, by the buyers themselves, by their lawyers, by their team, by their head of ops. And you just have to answer a ton of questions and provide a load of evidence, assuming it stacks up, assuming you haven't, and I've seen people do this as well, tell a wild story about how successful it is, forgetting that they're going to come and see it all. And then you have to spend half of that due diligence process explaining why it's not as good as what they'd said after 2 beers. So always tell the truth, because they're going to see it anyway. Assuming all of that happens, you then get a really detailed document, share purchase agreement, and it's loads of pages and it's loads of legalese, but it's all the detail of what's being acquired. It's, talking about warranties. It talks about, if you've not disclosed something and it comes, a health and safety issue came out, for example, you'll still be liable. All of that stuff gets detailed. And eventually, if you can agree on that, you sign it, you get your money, and off you go. And sometimes it's not as simple as a one-time payment. Sometimes they're paying you over 2 years. It depends on what you negotiate. Depending on how bad they want you, you might have more power over that than not.
That was going to be my next question, actually, was how does kind of payment and length of time stuff work? And you mentioned before about, do you refer to it as a changeover period or the handover period? Or because sometimes people still have to do a bit of work. Like I know I've had people who've sold business before, clients of mine, and they've sort of still worked in the business as like a contractor for a year or so.
Yeah.
Is that kind of fairly standard?
Yeah, very. Some people say I don't want to do anything and I just want to leave, and it's like it's very rare that people are cool with that because they might need you, they might have questions. So it can be 1 year. I've seen people do up to 3 years, so it's an earn out period. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So they'll take, you might take 60%, and then the other 40% is based on, they tend to put numbers to it. So if they buy the business, right, and they've given you 60%, and then year one everything drops, you might not get the rest of your earn out. And this is really important because people are like, yeah, I've got my offer of 10 million. It's like, no, you've got 6, right? The other 4 is dependent on hitting those milestones. And if you don't hit them, you'll get nothing. And I've seen people lose out on that and fully celebrating all of it. And it's like, you're not going to get it. So you do need to be careful. Earn outs are standard. It can be up to 3 years.
And this might be a very newbie-ish question, but are there any types of businesses that are easier to build and exit than others?
I think software's easy, mainly because I've done it. I've done product businesses as well, and they're harder, but it was possible because it was way back when Amazon was booming, and you could nail an Amazon business like in 3 months. It really didn't take long, so they were good, but I don't think that I would say they're as good now. I think if you do like a website agency, something like that, that's easy because anyone can build a website. They've got your framework. If they've got the trainings that you offer, it's easy to repeat. Something like Mike Samuels is harder because it is all Mike Samuels right now, right? So we would have to work hard to create. It's not going anywhere, everyone, if you're panicking. But you'd have to work harder, right, to create something to buy. So I think, software, anything with tech is easier.
And you mentioned, like, for example, the Amazon business, you can do it in sort of 3 months or so.
You could.
Yeah, I figured that was probably absolute best case scenario.
Yeah.
But on that theme, let's say kind of I get everything in place, the SOPs, outsource everything, all that kind of stuff. I'm guessing the answer is going to be, it depends how much you want to sell it for, but how long would you have to be running the business like that in order to feel confident that, like, I'm going to try and sell it and I think I'm going to get a good deal here?
This was back in 2016-ish, but you could build an Amazon business in 12 to 18 months and sell it at the end of that time in about 2 or 3 months and walk away with 7 figures. But that was if you'd built a quick growing and highly profitable business. I don't think you can do it now. I think it's far more competitive than it was back in 2016, as is the digital space. So it's longer. I think if we're just talking about general businesses, I would say 3 to 5 years probably. And then you might be looking at an exit if you do well. If you do what we see some people do, which is faff about for the first 3 years, then that's not going to apply to you.
Got it. And switching gears, going to talk about lifestyle. How do you balance everything? Personal life, business, all these clients who are probably, frantically asking you questions about stuff. Like what does a typical day look like for you in terms of business?
Well, in a nutshell, I'm permanently exhausted. No, I'm kidding.
Cool.
It's not so bad. It's harder for me because my kids are at home, right? So I did not find the schooling system in the UK to be any good for my kids. And it wasn't, I did not set out in that way. We tried it and it just didn't work for my son at all. So I was like, I'm going to have to homeschool him. And that was crazy because I'm sorry to the home, we're not even allowed to call it homeschooling in the UK. We call it educating at home. But to me, it's just homeschooling, right? And that's what my kids call it. And it was a very cliquey community to get into. And I was like, this is not fit for this. So we just did our own stuff at home. And then when COVID hit, and I had a tutor that would come round. And when COVID hit, obviously she couldn't come anymore. And I was like, I cannot believe that I'm running all these businesses on the internet and there's no school on the internet. There must be. And I Googled and there was. And I was like, oh, I'm going to give this a shot. And so we went there. And so my kids go to an online school now, which has been bought out by King's College. And it's not as good as it was, but it's good enough. And their education is wild. Like my daughter is 12. And from the age of 8, she could deliver an online presentation, PowerPoint, to hundreds of people. right? I would be sweating doing it now, and she's been doing it since she was 8 years old. So their foray into like technology is just insane. To her, this is completely normal. But they're at home with me all the time. I mean, we do go out. That sounds a bit weird. But, you know, in an average day, we're at home. My mornings are slow. I do not like rushing. I do not want to be in a meeting at 8 o'clock. I need it slower than that. They get to school and I can get to my desk. If I'm doing a meeting, I'm better in the morning than I am in the afternoon. And I need to bear in mind that I need to be able to cook their lunch at lunchtime. And then they finish about 3:55. So I'm trying to get my work done in those hours. Do I do it every day? No. Sometimes it spills over. I also try not to work on Fridays, and I try to take the school holidays off. So have a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. I don't do a lot of meetings because I'm not into that. If you can't say it in a message, don't say it to me at all. I do some meetings, obviously, because they're needed. Obviously, I've got my team that I meet with. But I try to keep meetings to a minimum. I try to make sure that we're using data dashboards with everybody, because I've done this for a long time and people come and tell me stuff based on how they feel. And we can make a whole strategy and a plan, or we did, on how they felt. And then I'd get the data and I was like, what are you talking about? Scrap everything we've just done there. The data says this. So I always get the data first, and we have a plan and then we implement it. In recent times, I've got frustrated with the mentoring side and the advising side, and I prefer to just move people out of the way and then go and do it myself. So like, this is the strategy, now let me implement it. You still need to do the marketing, you still need to be the face of the business, but let me build the stuff behind the scenes. So have I answered your question? On an average day, I'm quite busy and I try to finish by 4, and I have slow mornings, and that's
Nice.
about it.
I like it. Yeah, I think the sort of, as you said, the feelings versus data. I definitely remember the first sort of bigger consulting company I worked for, and we had clients. It took me about 6 months to realise that those two things are very, very different.
Yeah.
When someone would turn up to a call and say, oh, I really feel my funnel's not working, or I really feel I'm not getting good leads, I really feel that my cost per call is too high.
Yeah.
And you'd spend probably half an hour diving into it with someone on a group call that's supposed to be quite streamlined, to find out actually everything is absolutely fine. You've just probably got slightly unrealistic expectations, or your sales, when you get someone to the very end on the sales call, your sales suck and you just need to work at that. So yeah, I definitely think
100%. And the other way as well, like I've had a client who would say, oh yeah, you know, we've done a great week this week. And I'd be like, okay, great. Headline numbers. How many sales have we made? We've done 20 sales. I'm like, brilliant. Go there on Monday. And I'm like, dude, we did 4. Where's your 20 come from? And again, they're running off feeling and memories of conversations where they hear what they want to hear. And it drives me wild. It's like, just look at the data, please.
And who's your ideal type of client?
I need someone who is good with the vision, right? They know where they want to go, and is going to be okay with letting me in. And that's a hard blend. And that's possibly the hardest thing to find. In terms of what they're doing behind the scenes, I need somebody with assets. Like if you're just starting, there's very limited things that I can do for you. So I have in past times built things for people who are just starting out to help them out, right? So let me build your tech for you. Let me build your product stack. Let me tell you what to charge. Let me tell you what your core message is. I can do all of that. But my best results come with somebody who has assets, a history. They know what they're trying to achieve. They know what problems they can solve. And then I can get in and do my thing. If you know all that, I can help you.
I've found similar with copywriting in terms of I always help people get a first client, but it's much easier to help someone who's at 4 or 5 clients, let's say, earning kind of, 7, 8, 10 grand a month, double or triple that, than it is to help someone get their first
100%.
client. And it's always doable, but it's like, it's so much extra work to get that initial result.
Agreed.
That from
in the beginning, you don't know, do you? Like, well, I didn't anyway. Like, I had an idea of who I wanted to help, and I had an idea of how I wanted to help. But until you're actually out there doing it, you don't know. And trying to help someone at the beginning of that journey, they don't know yet either. And it's difficult to not steer somebody down the road that you think they should go if that's not for them.
And so with this one, feel free, I'm not asking for kind of exact numbers or anything, but how do you tend to work in terms of pricing? Do you charge kind of one-off fee? Is it retainer? Are you on percentage? Like, does it vary?
It can vary by client. Sometimes it's a monthly fee and this is what it's going to cost, and you will see the return. And if you don't, then we will do something different. I haven't had to do that yet, thank God. For some people, it's a one-off fee depending on what I'm doing. So if I am coming in and building stuff out, it's a one-off fee for me to do all that. And if I'm just helping them in terms of not building anything for them, I'm just doing the strategy of how do I get you from A to B, then there's a monthly retainer and you stay with me for 90 days at a time and we see what happens.
Got it. And let's say someone's watching this, they are building their business from scratch, they've still got a job, but they've got an idea. What's kind of a couple of key things they could do right from day one that basically means they avoid any screw-ups later down the line?
In terms of what, like financially?
Financials and maybe sort of business structure as well, kind of how they're setting up.
So obviously at that point you want to do it as a sole trader. There's no point setting up a limited company in the beginning because there's quite a lot of red tape around that. And if you're just going to give it up after 3 months, it's just not worth the hassle. So I would get going. I would not get too hard into your messaging. And when you're selling, I would be a little bit open. I would be honest and say, listen, this is what I'm good at, and I'm just exploring as you take on clients. Because if you try go in with a hard message of this is what I do, and then you find out actually you're not that great at that, and it's really difficult, you don't want to have to be messing about. So I would be open. I would try a couple of things. I would find what feels good, and then I would start to be like, right, who was my best client? What were the traits between the ones I've enjoyed the most? Okay, kind of that's maybe my niche, right, in broad speak. What problem am I solving? And I don't think enough people ask this question. What problem am I solving is the thing you need to sell and nothing else. And they don't start there. They start with, oh, I've got an idea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this offer. And it's like, but is that a problem of that niche? So please get that right. What problem do you solve and how do you do it? And set your prices not based on what your mate charged or what your mum said you should charge, based on the return that you get those clients. That is how you should set your price and go there. And as it starts to grow and you think this could become something, then talk about making it a limited company and then talk to me, because I'll make sure you don't lose out on the thing that everybody loses out on.
I suppose that's the whole build it and they'll come mantra that people have. Like the other day I was speaking to someone who has got a running podcast and publishes content and stuff, and he was on about creating a members area where people were paying like £9-10 a month or whatever, and I was like, that's fine, but they're not getting anything different than they get from you for free. Like you're not a multi-million followed Instagram influencer. It's like, yeah, you're not solving a problem.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people need to be told that. To us it's kind of obvious, maybe even not so much with their own businesses sometimes, but people need to realise, as you said, I'm solving a problem. There has to be something there. Even if your offer is more aspirational, you're still solving a problem. So, like you said, I'm a big fan of that idea of work with a few people first, find the commonalities, and let's face it, we've got AI now. You can put a customer profile into AI of everyone and say, find me the 10 things that these people have in common. Yeah. But yeah, people just don't think about it. I think that's sets them up to fail from day one, really.
Yeah, and I think people give up too soon. When I started out, I can't remember when it was, 2013, I think. I had to build a business because I now didn't have a job. I just sold the company, right? And okay, so that was nice. I had some money, but I needed to do something else. And I had 2 kids at home and I was like, I've got to build something. And guess what? I didn't write a Facebook post and then I was inundated with clients for the rest of my life. That didn't happen. I had to go out there and had to get them. I put a job on, I think it was Fiverr. Like I listed myself on Fiverr. That's how I got my first clients, right? And then I got this niche of Amazon because I got 2 or 3 of them, and then they told all their mates in the Facebook Amazon group, and that was it for me. So I was lucky. But people don't do the hard work, right? They do a post and they go, I don't get it. Like nobody's come to me. I'll just give up because this didn't work. Businesses are a bit harder than that. You need to do something. You need to be proactive. You need to go and put yourself out there. You need to go and list on Fiverr if that's what it takes to get a client and try it. You need to go and talk to people in your network. And I appreciate my friends watching this will be like, yeah, right. But I do talk to people. I do communicate. I reached out to you, right? So I do it. I just like being at home. And people don't do that part and don't give up too quick. Do that. And please, please, please don't start your business by launching a course. You've got no idea. You can't create a course if you've never worked with anyone.
That's one of my big bugbears is people, even if they've been sort of freelancing for 6 months, I'm like, you just don't really know enough. And I'm always a huge advocate for whatever you want to do in business, go for it. Like, don't let other people drag you down. So if you hear me say that, I want to go ahead with it anyway, then crack on. Don't let me stop you. But it's one of those things where I think there's an illusion that courses are going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I've gone a bit more back into doing a little more client work this year, just because I'm like, it's basically zero cost to acquire. I don't run Facebook ads to sign clients. It's very high profit margin because there's no cost involved. I get to work with people who are probably going to tell more people about me.
Yep.
I don't put refund guarantees in when I work with clients. It's like, look, I can't promise you a result. Here's what we're going to do. And they're like, no, that's fine. I get it. Let's go for it. Whereas courses always put a guarantee in. So you get the odd refund. I'm like, yeah, courses are not the holy grail, and you don't find out much about people.
You
either.
learn so much more by doing it, and like it gives you content for days, right? Like that's where my content comes from. What am I seeing on the ground? What am I getting involved in? It doesn't come from selling courses. It just doesn't. And they're great. I'm not ruling them out for passive income. Brilliant, have a course, but after you've done the hard yards.
Yep, 100% agreed. So I'll go for my quick fire 5 in a minute. But before that, Laura, if people want to know a bit more about you or reach out, inquire about your services, where's the best place for them to go?
The easiest thing to do is go to laurapowner.com because you can get to all the businesses that I have from there. So go there. I'm on social media, probably as the Laura Powner, maybe. I don't know. You'll find me.
I have to say, I like the fact you go on a website because no one does. Everyone's like, find me on Instagram. And I'm like, that's cool. But if Instagram goes...
No, don't do that because I won't reply to your message.
Yeah, perfect. That as well, definitely.
Go to the website.
Nice one. So I'll put that down in the description of the video as well. But quick fire 5 questions. So first one, if you could gift any business, marketing, copywriting or mindset book to someone, what would it be and why?
Traction. And everyone who will pick it up if they're a one-man band and go, well, this isn't relevant to me because it's talking about all these departments I have. I don't care. Read the whole book because it is so important. It teaches so many things that you should be aware of, even if you're not implementing yet. And you just can't go wrong. Just read Traction. Start there, please.
Like it. Who's that by?
Gino Wickman.
Cool. I should check that one out. Question 2, we're going for a coffee and I'm buying. What's your order?
Sadly, I'm not allowed caffeine, so it would be ginger tea.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nice.
Or peppermint tea.
That's all right. Don't mind a tea every now and again. Question number 3, you're hosting a dinner party for 3 people, living or dead. Who do you want to invite?
I've thought about this one because I've watched previous episodes and I'm like, who would I have? So I think I would have Louise Hay. Do you want to know why? I don't know.
Yeah, give a quick.
Louise
quick
Hay,
explanation.
because way back when I was in a job that I hated, I read a book and she was talking about, positive affirmations and all this. And I thought it can't be that easy, but I gave it a shot. And because of that mentality, I think that was why I took a leap and went to work for an almost bankrupt business. Why else would you do it, right? So I credit that one to Louise Hay. I would invite Jason Manford because I think it's hilarious and I like to laugh. And I would probably bring Gino De Campo because somebody needs to cook and it won't be me.
You might be the first. No, someone else said Marco Pierre White. They had the cooking covered. Although,
no, just go for Gino.
To be
He's
fair,
funny too.
yeah, no, Marco Pierre White, he probably refused to cook. So, question number 4. You're in charge of the internet for a day and you can get rid of any social media platform. What one do you want to get rid of?
TikTok.
Cool. I'm in agreement there. And final question would be, for someone who's starting out and wants to get where you are, what would the best piece of advice you could give them be?
What would I say? I mean, pretty much what we said here. Do the hard yards. Go and get involved in businesses. Ask people if you can help them. Talk to people. Talk to business owners. Ask them what their biggest problems are. Even if you don't work with them, just get up to speed with what is going on in the business world. Would I say do an accountancy qualification? Probably not, but it did open the doors. It's something for me to fall back on. The minute I say chartered accountant, people in the room kind of open their eyes and think, okay, maybe she's got an idea about what she's talking about. Might not be true, but it's a good one.
Amazing. Great advice. Awesome. Thanks for that, Laura. That was, loved that. Really interesting. So,
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. So I shall put all the links down in the description. Guys, thanks so much for watching. There'll be links to Laura's stuff down below, links to all my usual FKS bits as well. Any comments, post them down there, and then all the usual like, subscribe, notifications, all that kind of stuff would be much appreciated. So yeah, until next time, I shall catch you then.